corn and wheat and soybeans are going to rise into the fall. I'm convinced. I can see it in the charts. The processors are going to make money until basically the wholesale catches up to them, and then they're going to be screwed too. They're going to be too high. But yeah, demand destruction. They talk about with the Federal Reserve, well, we got to have demand destruction. It's like it's an academic exercise, but in real life, that means people aren't eating, people aren't driving, people aren't working, people aren't buying things, and that ripples all the way through. And then when people lose their job, it's not like, oh, he just lost his job for 6 weeks because we did demand destruction. Those jobs don't come back in some cases. Or if they come back at a lower rate, and people just never get off the hamster wheel.
Good afternoon, everyone. Bob Kudla is joining me today, tradelikeagenius.com. Now, if you'd even watched our interview from last month, how many things have come to fruition in just these last 30 days that we were talking about? So as we look out through media headlines across the blogosphere, and I was reading one today, Global Summer of Starvation is what they're going to term this. And we've seen a lot of countries get into the panic mode, knowing that their governments will be toppled if they do not keep food resources in their borders. So, looking out, we could look for food nationalism or resource nationalism, where things will not be exported. Prices are going to continue higher for energy, and that would include natural gas across the rest of the planet. Like the U.S. might be staved a little bit because of the loading terminal damage that has ceased some of the exports going outbound to Europe. But we're still looking at absurd gasoline prices, which looks like they don't or won't come back down. The reprogramming of pumps across the U.S. for $10 or 4-digit gasoline just shows where they're already in companies are intending for prices to move to. Then how that's going to curtail the entire economy as we go into depleted crop yields based on non-availability of fertilizers, farmers taking prevent plant because it was too expensive to plant or they didn't have the actual farm inputs to get it in the ground. The intention versus what's really happening is now very stark. We're setting up to something we haven't seen. I'm not even going to say in multi-generation, it'd be more than multi-century. We're indeed in a special time, and it's really going to start to culminate right now as awareness of food, lack of food, resources being hoarded by countries and then by individuals. And it's just going to start spiraling from here. So, Bob, I appreciate you joining me. And as always, I'm trying to pick your brain for ideas as we move through, as well as everybody watching, so they can get a glimpse on how our society and world is moving economically. But that is also the next step up for the society, how it's going to move and how people will behave. Probably not in a very nice, polite way this time. When it comes to your food and your children starving, your politeness is probably going to be the first thing that goes out the door. But anyway, Bob, thanks for joining.
Hey, thanks for having me. First of all, I want to just start off with some good news, is that the summer of starvation is not America, by the way. Okay.
Oh, no.
So
we'll be one of the last countries. Thanks.
Yeah. If you're in America, look, it's just going to be the summer of, as I told a lady at Trader Joe's when they only had jumbo eggs instead of large eggs, it's going to be the summer of we're pissed off. Okay. And just because a lot of this stuff is shooting themselves in the foot here. So I shot Dave a note, probably throw it up there when he puts this out there, about the increases of the basically all the fires across all the infrastructure around food tech and food processing. So there is a fifth column at work. I don't care what anybody tells me, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Okay, I'm probably the least conspiracy theorist person out there. I always look at everything jaded. But math is math, and this is just ridiculous in terms of standard deviation away from the norm here. Now, is it the New World Order? Is it the WEF? Or is it people just trying to cash in on insurance? I don't know. All I do know is that when these things happen, they're causing, and these are very strategic kind of thing, fires. The baby formula one just happens to be where we only have one approved baby formula factory in the United States, which is a crime in and of itself because that's government not in action, okay? But I think there's good news with all of that as well, because I think these oligarchies and these these monopolies now are going to, just by the nature of people being so annoyed and aware, I think are going to start to go away. There will be more than one baby food factory, formula factory going forward now, just based on this. Just yesterday, we're big in uranium, as everybody knows. We've been talking about uranium for years. Is that 2 days ago or 3 days ago, Biden wants to have some sort of a defense authorization around basically fuel cells and around solar panel production. Yesterday, it was we're going to buy $4.3 billion worth of enriched uranium domestically. And we own Quad U, which is the domestic producer of uranium, and we own CCJ, which is in Canada, close enough for me. And there's UEC, which has the largest reserves in the ground in the United States. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. We had follow through on it again today. And so I think we're going to start to see the move in uranium. Australia now is starting to ignore their green energy crazies, and they're going to add uranium to their renewable mix. I think it's a smart move. And just so everybody knows, I am a very conservative person, but I love uranium. I love nuclear. I am pro-renewable. I am anti-government getting in front of a natural progression of technology, because that's why we are where we are today. And we put ourselves in a position where Russia felt very comfortable being able to make the moves they made, because we basically make their economy profitable above $90 oil for them. Same with the Saudis, same with the Iranians. We put them all in a position now where people that would like to do us, if not direct harm, but indirect harm, in a position of being able to do so from an economic standpoint. The good news for us is United States, Canada, Mexico, we're resource rich. And then I think what we're going to see here is a collapsing of these commodities. You saw lithium mine in Mexico. Mexico is going to nationalize their lithium mines. You're going to see it with food. India's starting to pull back. They have to. I don't think an Indian government that wants to stay in power is going to export their wheat to a third world country and then find out they don't have enough wheat for their own people. So you're going to start to see that. China got ahead of this game. They knew this game was coming. They caused the game. And so they went ahead and they have 70% of all the stockpiled grains out there. Now, if they don't stay ahead of this, they're in big trouble. But from our standpoint, from Trade Genius's standpoint, is that we've been heavy energy. To pat myself on my own back here is that, we've been in the right stuff here for a long time, but not just in the trades we give, but in my own personal longer term portfolio, we've been raising cash and drifting towards energy for the last 12 months, and we're at the high water mark. I didn't check today yet on all my portfolios, but yesterday we hit a high water mark as I was raising 40% of my portfolios in now cash, just because the energy is dominating so much. Now, will that end? I think so. We'll probably push through the summer here. It's almost a foregone conclusion we'll double top. So oil will probably hit the low 130s again. It's pushed to 123 today, so that's not a big stretch. But probably by the end of summer, we're going to be in a situation where there's going to be enough demand destruction. There's probably going to be some sort of accommodation with Russia going into the fall, just because Europe can't tolerate anymore. The Russians definitely want a deal. They wanted what they wanted, and they got what they wanted. And, they're going to force Zelensky into a situation where that conflict's going to end. I think it brings oil prices down, and then it's going to bring fertilizer prices down. But before then, we're going to still struggle with 2023 food. And then I think then we can kind of see where 2024 holds out. Now, my only caveat to all this is that, as Dave knows, is that the climate change with the grand solar minimum and Australia being ice cold again, and the Pacific remaining cold, is that I think we're going to get some sort of macro black swan in one of the growing regions. Which one? I don't know. Dave, you're better at it than I do. I just have this feeling watching the patterns that we're going to get hit somewhere. United States is not coming out of this very, very good in terms of good to excellent growing. We bought CORN, we bought soybean SOYB for the summer in our ETFs for Trade Genius, and we expect those to move higher. So that's my macro view on this. I'm strong energy. Look, natural gas, uranium will push past oil prices. Oil will come down, but uranium is on its way. Look at 2002 to 2008. That's uranium. Natural gas, even though this terminal blew up, which is a blessing for us, they're going to they'll get that ship righted, and we're going to be exporting natural gas to Europe for the next couple of years. Basically, Europe's screw up we're paying for, unless there's going to be political, will to stop that, which I don't think there will be, because the Democrats don't want us to be consuming fossil fuels, and the Republicans are pro energy. So our natural gas is being frozen or liquefied, and it's being sent to Europe because they're paying twice as much as we are, and then it'll slowly drift our prices higher. So if you can't beat them, own them and own those companies. And if you join us, then we'll happily share what those companies are, even dividend paying companies and some direct, drillers and midstream guys and LPG guys. And there's some really cool two companies that I own in the propane space, liquefied petroleum space, that pay killer dividends, and you can make a good living on this. If not, you're at least staying ahead of the inflation monster by getting these dividend checks to shove back into your gas tank.
With the Defense Nationalization and Authorization Act, do you think, because there's so much silver involved in a solar panel and different types of this green energy production, that would affect the silver price going upward? And the rerouting of oil from Western Africa to Europe in this interim phase before some of these pipelines may come back online for Russian oil, that's going to draw away heavily from Chinese imports to the tune of 1.5 million barrels a day. So how do you see that? Because Europe right now is absolutely coddling everybody, offering new deals down across Western Africa to get that oil rerouted up there. So we're suddenly looking at a spigot turnoff in China, and the silver price is going anywhere. But we look at grains, and as we progress through these crop tours, then we'll really get some good analysis on what's grown or not grown. But right now, the Tonga eruption is one of the biggest things to look at that's not being talked about for this upcoming southern hemisphere growth season. That ash column, for anybody that didn't hear NASA's newest projection, was 192,000 feet eject. The largest, tallest one that has been recorded, even back to the Tambora eruption. Wow. So when you're looking at the ash drift, you're looking at, Argentina would be my call on that, with the largest amount of reduction, followed by Chile, Peru, and then Brazil. South America is going to be heavily affected more than others, and look for Western Australia also to reduce. But this was more going toward that 20-degree north or south latitude band there, where that ash would circulate the most heavy and stay in its band as it was moving through the cloud cells down to the southern hemisphere pole there, to the South Pole.
The thing with the oil moving around, oil is not the problem so much as it is the refined gasoline. So what Russia's doing is, look, Russia's producing all the oil at once and is selling all the oil it has. So this notion that Russia is causing oil prices to go up is simply spurious. And United States, we put ourselves in a situation where we created this environment. All Russia's doing is selling it to India. India is pumping it through the refineries and selling it back to Europe. So everybody's winking and nodding at each other on this thing, and so I suspect China is not in an enviable position, guys. I hate when people think so. Just because you hear it on the mainstream media, China is doing all the wrong things, strategically, and on top of that, their population is now in a position to go into what's called a rapid decline. They're losing their labor edge in terms of pricing. They're losing laborers because there's this phenomenon. I think we might have talked about this before. I thought it was fascinating listening to my friend talk about it. It's called lie flat. I'm sure you've heard of it, Dave, where people screw working 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. I'm making no money at all. and I'm making somebody else rich. So I'll just bop around and I'm already living like a pig in these countries. I'll just bop around and take as many jobs as I need to survive from day to day and enjoy life. And so the Chinese have a kind of a labor shortage problem. At the same time, they're losing their labor edge. And God knows what Xi's up to with all these lockdowns. I don't know if it's a internal domestic political or if he's trying to export inflation to us. But whatever it's doing, it's harming him more than it's harming everybody else. And I think China is going to be in a situation where they're going to be in big trouble too. And so if they have a false step on food production, especially if the La Nina flips back to El Nino, I think it's going to cause some issues in China from food standpoint too. But bottom line for me is that between now and September, corn prices, soybean prices are going higher. That's going to affect eggs and chicken. If you want to own a great chicken producer, buy Pilgrim's Pride. Those people are their costs are going up 30%, but they're charging 70% more. So they're expanding their margin. I'm waiting for them to get dragged into a congressional hearing because they're chicken producers and they're just far outstripping their costs to take advantage of people being afraid and trying to get their hands on these birds. So I guess they've not been affected by the avian flu that's been ripping around, but they're making a mint right now.
Yeah, let me pick your brain on corn deliveries here. I've been having a few conversations up with a couple guys I know at the CBOE, which is, if you got the contracts for corn or wheat, you take delivery up in Chicago. Now, a couple different things are happening here. First, the amount of contract that are going to take delivery this year is the highest ever recorded in human history. The amount of contracts, normally around 5% that take physical, most of them cash settle. But this time they're looking upwards of 15, maybe 18% of all contracts out there want physical delivery. They can't facilitate that. They don't have enough contract growers for that or clearinghouses to bring in growers to actually facilitate that. That's one. The amount of fines that these clearinghouses are going to be fined per day because they can't deliver on contracts is going to wipe out a few of them. But the most fascinating thing for me is they're already saying that even if they get it, they're having a barge shortage and they're having a rail car shortage. So I just don't understand, even if they can get the corn or wheat in under their belts, they're not going to be able to move it. And then there's non-delivery. So, walk me through that as a mind experiment. If they're not able to deliver on contract, I have it, I want physical. Oh, I can't get transportation either. So how is this going to, throw out, I guess, some sticky gum into the works here? Because, and trailing that on, if these factories can't get their input source, they're just going to start laying off people, or they're going to close the factories, and that leads in higher unemployment. And the daisy chain can go pretty far on this one.
Yeah, they'll declare some sort of force majeure.
You think they will? Oh, cheaters.
Yeah, where the government's going to get engaged and force these things through the supply chain. So these models with these middlemen, look what happened with nickel with the LME, right? So everything got all these guys are all going to get blown up because they're also, you have to understand, they're trading against their position so that they can protect themselves. But if they can't deliver and they're short, you know what I mean? Goodbye. And that's what's going to happen. So a lot of these guys are going to blow up, and that will ripple through the banking system too. So I have a feeling they're going to force majeure these things, and they're going to try to figure their way through this process. What I don't know is, do we have a lot in storage right now, or is everybody waiting to get their hands on what's coming out of the ground this year? That's a little bit beyond what I look at, because I'm primarily looking at just a more higher level. Is there enough coming out of the ground? But corn, right now, I think there's a 10% move in it. We just got a buy signal on it. We're definitely, and I'm talking the ETF, the buy signal hit around 27.50. I was already in it. But we're looking at probably 30.31. So that's grain at basically the commodity level, a 10%, move higher. And I'm talking to you guys, but I'm actually looking at a chart at the same time. So if I'm looking like I'm looking weird, that's what I'm doing here. Is that right now, the last time we had a move here in February, we had a 21% move. And then the next buy signal we had was flat. The next one was a 6% move. And then this was basically a flat move. This next move coming up is likely to be a 12 to 15% move higher. And this is when you look at year over year, we're year over year 20% higher already, Dave. So, all this stuff ripples through the chain as we go on. And, corn, soybeans the same way. Wheat and barley, you can get away with probably putting less fertilizer in the ground, but corn is a food fertilizer suck. It definitely needs fertilizer, and soybeans can produce some of their own. I also noticed nitrogen, because I follow a nitrogen company that produces it from natural gas. They create their ammonia and or ammonium for fertilizers, and people just stopped buying it because it was so expensive. I think it got to $1,000 or something like that, and people just stopped buying it. Period. And which is scary because nitrogen and potash are the two big boys that get put in the ground. So look, you don't have to look any further than Sri Lanka. See what happens when you cut back on fertilizer. They lost 10% of their rice crop, and people are starving. You notice that dropped off the news. I'm sure they haven't solved that problem, but they have no money to buy anything. They can't import anything. So I don't know what they're doing. I mean, that's going to be a failed state. And these are the kind of things that cause wars, when you don't get enough food. And he controls a very, very strategic, strait there in terms of Bosphorus, that he can block things coming and going. That's the reason why I think Russia is going to probably relent at some point, because they have to use that strait to get goods out of their country. They can't rely on getting it to Iran. They can't get it to Pakistan through Afghanistan, and they're doing everything they can with China. And China and Russia have been getting some tense conversations of late too. So he's going to have to make some sort of rapprochement. Look, if France already said they'll do whatever, right? So France and Germany will relent. They'll force Zelensky, and then I think we're gonna basically that geopolitical is going to end, because if it doesn't, then I think 2024 is going to be the year of worldwide starvation.
Yeah, I was seeing that some of their shallower water ports, I forget the name, it starts with a T. It's right there at the Black Sea. They're rerouting the oil down to the Baku pipeline and then sending it through the BTC pipeline down to Ceyhan, which offloads into a deep water port off of Turkey. So they're doing that zigzag, but it's costing a little extra. But there's buyers down there waiting to siphon it up, specifically Indian ships. And you made a real good call last month when you were saying that look for the price of fertilizer to drop, because it did. It kind of peaked out and then wham, it dropped off a good 10, 12%. And Brazil has so much tonnage in their warehouses. I was looking at 3.5 million tons of fertilizer in the warehouse. Reason being, the price got too high. Demand destruction. So the farmers couldn't buy it at a certain price. So the warehouses are chock-a-block completely, not even a square inch left of filling up fertilizer. So now the prices are starting to drop. And you'd made a very specific call last month that fertilizer prices were going to drop through this first phase, and the real shortages would start in 2023. Well, I'll be very in agreement with you on that, especially as we move through. Another caveat to look at is, people are going to start to understand these food shortages. They'll have to grow their own food, and there's going to be a run on farming tools and things that you can buy. And then we'll watch all these prices increase again next year.
I think this kind of goes into the fall. People say that's good news, but it's good news, bad news, because the farmers don't need the fertilizer right now. And so, they and they're not sure they're going to plant next year. So it's going to be, because it's not just a fertilizer problem. The people that I know that farm, I don't have to tell you, you're a farmer now. So a lot of these guys need diesel and propane, and it's lights out expensive, and you can't dry your stuff anymore. So, I'm pretty familiar with a farmer in Pennsylvania, and And they're doing all kinds of crazy things to swap instead of trying to dry their own stuff. They're do I leave the stuff in the field longer? Do I take a risk there? Uh, they basically said, hey, look, we're going to now make more of our own animals because of this, and we're gonna basically chop our own feed, because we need to control more of the supply chain, because the price between that level and the retail is cataclysmically wider now, and and the farmers have to vertically integrate to be able to make money. But yeah, fertilizer's down till September. Then I think it's going to pop. Corn and wheat and soybeans are going to rise into the fall. I'm convinced. I can see it in the charts. The food processors are going to make money until basically the wholesale catches up to them, and then they're going to be screwed too. They're going to be too high. But yeah, demand destruction. They talk about with the Federal Reserve, well, we got to have demand destruction. It's like it's an academic exercise, but in real life, that means people aren't eating, people aren't driving, people aren't working, people aren't buying things, and that ripples all the way through. And then when people lose their job, it's not like, oh, he just lost his job for 6 weeks because we did demand destruction. Those jobs don't come back in some cases, or if they come back at a lower rate, and people just never get off the hamster wheel.
So where does that leave us if we have a real drought-ridden, grow season where nothing really matures, ears are smaller, kernel sizes are smaller, everything is reduced in yield? Then what?
Yeah, then you get price of pork and beef that will fall short term, and take advantage of it and stock up your freezer, because then the next 2 years it's going to be brutally high. We've seen this before with bacon a couple years ago when it got all the way up to like $17 a pound before it came back. We've seen it with beef. Beef prices have come down again, but they're starting to kick back up. So what you have to do in these situations is it's going to be feast and famine for the farmers too. When they have to dump their animals onto the market because they can't feed them, is that it causes a short-term glut. That's when you have to buy. And then when it becomes dear, you just don't eat it. You roll down to chicken and other proteins. But here's the wheel, right? 90 days to get a chicken to the market, 9 months to get a pig to the market, and it's 2 to 3 years to get basically a steer to the market. So if they start wiping them out, that's why beef always takes so long to come back. And especially if you really cull the herd, because you don't have enough mamas to produce the new babies. I mean, a chicken needs grain to make eggs. So and then you have these terrible farms, basically 3 million egg ranch in Minnesota. I think that's what's causing Trader Joe's so many problems right now, because I think they were the big buyer from that ranch, which is just amazing to me how a factory, I guess must have been all the the chicken manure must have just went up in flames, and which is insane. It was a metal building and it burned like it was wood. How does that happen? Crazy. Like
they didn't have any sections of that cordoned off where they would think that would happen, or you wouldn't want smoke to go in or any kind of contamination to go into the next house. Like there wouldn't be a literal firewall between there for fire code to stop that. I'm baffled by some of these things like you are.
Yeah, no fire suppression at all. Crazy. Well, there's definitely something going on there, but you and I can't control that. All I can control is I'm of the philosophy is that you and I are walking in the woods, and next thing you know, when a bear comes behind us, I sit on a rock, I start putting on my sneakers, and you say to me, "Hey, Bob, you can't outrun the bear," and I said, "I don't have to. I just have to outrun you." And that's how you have to think about this stuff when you're trying to, for your family, is that I'll control what I can control. I'll cut back where I can cut back. I'll modify where I can modify. But the best way of maintaining your standard of living is to basically out earn your problem. And so I was always trying to help people understand that. And then this is just like throwing an accelerant right at the same time that we're going to run into basically peak productivity on the farms.